Welcome to another episode of Sound Advice with Sound Engineer Barry. In this episode, we're going to talk about culture. That is, I've worked with a lot of different people. I've worked in corporate America. I've worked as a consultant. I've worked in an office. But I love working with bands, and I love working with musicians because musicians are creative people and they're fun. And I've had a lot of experiences, almost all of them really good, working with musicians. It's a great time. And if I didn't love it, I'm definitely in the wrong business. So I feel honored that I've been able to do the things that I do and do them for so long and work with so many great people. Of course, sometimes musicians do things that make it more difficult for us to put on a great show. And so I'd like to give you some tips for things that you can do to have a great relationship with the venues that you work at, and things you can avoid to make it easier to put on a great show. Now, of course, I'm speaking from my own experience and the venues that I'm working at, and different places may have a little different culture. Your mileage may vary. But I think that this is pretty solid, applicable advice to most places that you might find yourself. So I hope these tips are useful to you, and I hope they help you put on great shows and help you have profitable evenings for the venues, which causes you to get rehired, rebooked. My first tip is that you should know why you're there. And it's really not to play music or to be a great band. Although I appreciate that and I enjoy mixing a good band. But the reason you are there is to help the bar or the venue make money. You're there to be sales guys for food and drink and alcohol. And so I've seen these cases where a mediocre band will come in and they'll have a great night. And they have great audience participation. They're a really fun group. And at the end of the night, the till reflects that. And then I've had other bands come in who are amazing musicians, but they play material that just doesn't connect quite as well with the audience, or they stare at their boots all night and don't really engage the audience. And the till at the end of the night reflects that. And so who gets rehired? Not the great band. The okay band gets rehired because it's just a matter of economics. The balance sheet at the end of the night is probably the number one thing that determines whether or not the venue has you back. So keep that in mind. So during your show, it's a really good idea to connect well with the audience and have some participation and encourage those people to have a good time and party on and drink alcohol, buy stuff from the bar, because that's the number one thing that's going to be the determining factor whether or not the bar wants to have you back. When you come in, please be polite and enthusiastic. We all have to work as a team. And don't be a diva. There's no divas on my stage. I don't care how good you are. The chances are I've probably worked with people better than you. And I'm not working for you either. I work for the venue. If anything, you're working for me because you're getting paid by the venue to come in and do a job. Now, I want everybody to have a happy, relaxed, good attitude. We got to work together to make this thing come together. And when you have a good show, I have a good show. So I want to do everything I can to help you put on a great show. But respect goes both ways. And we all have to respect each other and, we'll have a good time together. If you need anything while you're there, don't hesitate to ask me. If you need an adjustment on your monitor, don't hold back. Let me know. I'll be glad to do whatever I can for you. If there's anything that's causing you trouble in the venue, something's blocking your way or whatnot, just ask me. Like I say, I'm happy to do whatever I can to help you put on a great show. Now, of course, I've got my limitations too, and there's some things that we just can't do anything about sometimes. But don't be just holding back and being grumpy about the situation if there's something that I can adjust for you. If the lights are too hot and you're sweating too much, just let me know. I'll be glad to do what I can if I can without impacting the show too much. So, like I say, I'm I try to work as well as I can with the bands, and we're all part of the same team. Got the same goal. Now, when you come in, please be early. Now, some venues have things and activities happening before the band comes in, and you won't be able to occupy the space you need to occupy, so it's nice if you know those things in advance so you don't waste too much time. But in the venue that I've been working at recently, we have a dedicated stage, and you can come in pretty much as early as you want. And so it's a good idea to get in there plenty early so that you don't have any issues getting set up and there's no big rush, because I certainly don't like being rushed and stressed out at the last minute trying to get a show on. And if there's any little issues or complications that arise, it's nice to have ample time to sort through them. So come in, be early, and that way you can get your stuff set up with the least disruption to the other things that are happening inside of the venue. When you come in, meet with your sound guy, introduce yourself, and let him know just what your band is going to need for the evening, what inputs and so forth. Let him know how many vocal mics you need and where they're going to be placed, what you have for amplifiers or keyboards or acoustic guitar, or any of those inputs and DI boxes that you need. If you're really well prepared, you'll bring in a stage plot, a little stage diagram. We'd love that. And that way we can get ourselves set up, for your band with the least amount of drama. If you have a set list, that's great. Please give the sound guy a set list, because it's nice if he can follow along with your show. And on your set list, try to note down by the various songs if there's anything unusual happening. For example, if there's a guy in the band who normally doesn't sing, but on this one song or a couple of songs, he's the lead singer. So that gives the sound guy a little heads up as to what's happening, and fewer surprises make for a smoother show. Or if there's a show where there's an acoustic guitar part and you normally don't use that instrument, it's nice to have a little note so you have a heads up that something's going to happen. Please don't drag in excessive gear. Now, maybe it's part of your stage show to have a whole bunch of equipment up on stage, and if that's your thing, I guess that's your thing. But dragging in a big power amp like a 100-watt Marshall is really excessive. It's kind of like driving a dump truck to the grocery store to pick up a bag of groceries. I've got a sport bike. It's a great motorcycle, and it's super fast. In fact, when it came out, it was the world's fastest production motorcycle, and it is a heck of a lot of fun. But it's hard to drive at 55 miles an hour. I can do that in second gear. And all while I am doing that, it's fine. It purrs along at 50, 55. But all while I'm doing it, the bike is kind of whispering to me. It's like, come on, dude. Let's go. Let's go a little bit faster. And just a little twist of the wrist, and a few seconds later, you're in the triple digits, and it's just a rush. That's kind of how dragging in something like a 100-watt Marshall head is to a small bar. You can play quietly, I'm sure, and there's some guys who can, but it's hard. It's hard to keep yourself under control, and at those low volumes, you're just not going to be getting the kind of really wonderful, creamy tones out of that amplifier. It's not going to be at its very best. So, in my experience, the really seasoned musicians who have been around a while, been doing this for quite some time, they, after not too long, decide not to carry around all that heavy, awkward gear. I mean, just a hassle, And a small little guitar amp works better, and they can carry it with one hand. It's just so much easier. So, if that's your thing, that's your thing, and that's fine. But when a band comes walking in the door and they're carrying in like a full stack Marshall or a 8x10 bass cab and all this really monstrous gear, you're kind of starting off on the wrong foot with the sound guy. Because my initial reaction to that sort of thing is, oh, good grief, it's going to be amateur hour. These guys probably aren't very experienced, and they're probably going to turn this nonsense up and hurt me with it, and it's going to be really hard to mix the band. Oh boy, great. And so you're starting off on the wrong foot with the sound guy, dragging in all that stuff, and now you've got to sort of impress the dude once your show begins. And like I say, if it's for your show and you think it looks super cool, that's your thing, and I won't argue with that. I will say, however, that in all of my experience of doing this, I don't recall once ever hearing an audience member make a statement like, "My God, did you see the amp that guy's using? He's got a Marshall Plexi." I've seen audience members remark about the guitar that some guy plays, or more often, just how great the playing is. But I never see the audience care at all about equipment. And likewise, I've never had a guy come up to me and go, "Wow, Bear, you're using Crown Macrotech power amps. Cool." No, nobody cares what I use for power amps and speakers and stuff, as long as the show sounds good. Sometimes during the show we have minor problems, and so make sure to bring all the pieces and parts that you might need in case you encounter any little glitches, like maybe an extra guitar cord, extra batteries, some tape, maybe fuses for your equipment. Might want to bring an extension cord, a power strip. If you want to bring your own mics, that would be good. That'd be fine. So make sure you have all of the little piece parts that you might need in case you have any trouble during the show. Before the show, you're going to get up on stage and make sure you're in tune. And that's a polite thing to do. I know you tune because you care, and we all appreciate it. But something that we don't appreciate is when musicians are up on stage dinking around, noodling on their guitar. I think it's super amateur. What the hell are you doing, bro? We've got people in the venue who are trying to have dinner, or maybe they're watching something on the TV, and I've got a guy on stage, he thinks quietly, but not really that quietly, playing Eruption or something. It's distracting, and it detracts from the opening of your show. And so why do that? But yeah, please get yourself set up, get yourself tuned up. Yeah, take some minute or two, and then set your instrument down and wait for the show to begin. Please don't be making a bunch of unnecessary noise up on stage that's distracting to the bar. Bar venue usually kind of hates that. Your show begins at 9 in my venue. Maybe it begins at a different time at your venue. But we try to do things on time. We have a commitment to our patrons that the show will be happening at a certain time, and I take that serious. I try to do a good job. And so the show begins at 9, not 9:30 or 9:15 or 8:45. It begins at 9. So please be ready when the show start time is to be up there and do your thing. Now, sometimes we move by a little bit, plus or minus, but please don't dink around, for 20, 30 minutes before the show, because that's disrespectful to the audience and to the venue. So when the show time is 9, be ready at 9. Simple as that. When you're up on stage, please control your levels. This is probably the number one issue that I have with bands. And like I alluded to earlier with people bringing in monster gear, sometimes people are on stage and they just play louder than it is convenient for the venue. Sometimes we have drummers who are Godzillas who just pound away on things super hard, and that's enough. More often I have somebody on a guitar or a bass amp who has just got really high stage volume. And that is bad in a number of ways. And I know it's a common complaint with bands going, "Oh, damn sound guys keep telling me to turn down." But there's a reason for that, because when you crank up, I can't put you in the PA. The sound is just coming right off your amp. And that's not good, because your amplifier, your guitar amp, is not at the same plane, not at the same place on stage as the PA speakers are. And so there's a time delay from the sound of the amplifier coming out to the audience versus the sound of the speakers to the audience. And that time delay between your instrument sound and the rest of the band makes the band sound bad. The guitar amp also probably doesn't have a very wide pattern to it for its sound distribution. So you're going to just rip the faces off of the center of the audience right in front of the stage, And the other people in the venue off to the sides and rear aren't going to get a very good guitar sound. And so there will be nowhere in the audience where you sound good. Whereas if I can put your instrument through the PA system that has nice wide distribution, it's properly controlled for the room, and you sound good and the band sounds balanced. But if I can't put you in the PA, the band is going to sound out of balance no matter where you are in the room, and your instrument won't sound very good. You also take away all the control the sound guy has over your instrument, obviously, because I'm not putting it through the PA. So in most cases, that instrument is just too loud, and I have no choice but to either let your instrument just walk all over the band and give you a terrible mix, or else lift up the rest of the band to match your level. And now the whole band is just way too loud. Then the bartenders can't take drink orders. The patrons are getting annoyed. And that impacts the amount of income that the bar makes. And if that decreases the amount of income, that decreases the chances that you're going to get hired again. Furthermore, I can't control the tone at all. Now, I try not to mess with a musician's tone. You know, if they have a good tone and I've got a decent PA system, I just let it go straight through and everybody's happy. But, you know, sometimes in order to make the mix balance come out right, I need to make a little adjustment. You know, for example, maybe the bass guitar has an awful lot of mid bass in it, and that mid bass is a bit excessive and it's stomping on the vocals and, you know, killing the vocal clarity of the band. In that case, I'll add a little more of the bass into the subwoofers, give you some meat, and I'll knock down those upper mid-bass tones a bit to let the vocals ride on top of it and come through clear without, you know, pushing just ridiculous levels of the band. And that way everybody sounds great. But if you crank up and I can't run your instrument through the PA, I don't have that kind of control and I can't make you sound good. So please don't kill me with level. If I can hear your instrument clearly on the other side of the room, it's too loud. And if you need more stage volume, it's better to just ask me to put a little bit of your instrument in through your stage monitor, because your monitor is pointing up at your head and you can hear it better than, for example, a bass guitar, which is aiming down at your ankles, and all that sound is hitting the audience and not hitting your ears. So I know that's a real common complaint with sound guys, and that's the reasons why, is that it really makes it hard to make the band sound good when people are out of control on stage. One of the stupidest things I've ever heard a musician tell me was I went up and said, hey man, you're really hit me with a lot of level. You might turn the thing down a good notch. And he comes back and says, you know, a good sound guy can handle a loud stage volume. Yeah, sure. And a good marathon runner can run a marathon with one shoe, but, you know, it makes it really painful, and you're not going to do as well. And so why handicap yourself, you know? Yeah. Okay. If I come up and ask you to turn down, honestly, it's the last thing I want to do, because I want you to have a great show. And part of having a great show is being in a great attitude and just, you know, being into it. And I know if I come up and say, man, you're killing me, I got to turn that thing down, that hurts people's feelings. And I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, and I don't want to step on anybody's mojo. And so if I have to go up there and ask the band to make an adjustment, it's because it's pretty far out of whack and I'm really having trouble handling it. And so if I come up and say, hey man, would you please back that thing down a bit because it's just killing us, please do it. Don't just reach over to the control and breathe on it and move it, you know, an infinitesimal amount and go, okay dude, there you go. Because you're not fooling me. You know, I've got meters. I can tell exactly how far you've come down or not. And if you choose not to come down, or, you know, barely, that's okay. I don't care. It's your show. You know, if you want to ruin your show, that's your choice. But know that by doing that, there's a real good chance that that will be your last show at our venue. So, like I say, I don't want to jump on anybody. I want us to work together and have a really good time and have a really good show. And so if you make it impossible for me to help you have a good show, well, that's not really working together, is it? And I'm not trying to insult anybody by doing it. I'm just trying to get what I need so I can help you out. Like I mentioned, probably the most challenging thing in providing a good show is the volume on stage, because high stage volume means that all of the microphones on stage are picking up bleed from other instruments. And if you were a chef and you're trying to make a delicious dish and all of your ingredients were mixed with other things, you had a bowl of salt, but it also had pepper mixed in with it, and you had a bowl of peas, but it also had carrots mixed in it, and you've already got too many carrots, but you want more peas, it makes it really hard to mix things up properly in proper ratios. And so, in the band, if my vocal mics have a lot of drum coming through them, but I've already got too much drum in the mix, and I don't have enough vocals, but I try to push the vocals up and I just get more snare drum, that's really a challenging situation. And so loud stage volumes are one of the biggest challenges that sound guys deal with in order to try to make the band sound the best. And reducing the stage volume is a major thing you can do to provide a better sounding band. And one of the big ways you can do that is to eliminate the wedges on stage, the monitor wedges, by using in-ear monitors. So if you come into my house and you're using an in-ear rig, I'm a happy guy. So bonus points for using in-ears. And on that note, I also use a digital mixer, which is a Behringer X32, which is a pretty common board these days. And I wirelessly control it much of the time. And so if you have the Behringer X32 monitor application on your smartphone, you can mix your own monitors. So it might not be a bad idea to grab a couple of the common stage monitor mixing apps and put them on your phone. So when you're in a venue that has one of these digital boards, it's a good chance that you can ask the sound guy if he's using a digital board and which one, and if he minds if you connect your phone to his system so you can mix your own monitors. And I'm happy to do that because I can't hear what's happening on stage so well when I'm on the back side of the room. And so you can probably mix your monitor better than I can. And that's certainly a lot more convenient than doing some kind of pantomime on stage and trying to let me know that you need a little bit more or less of this or that in your wedge or your ears. When you're up on stage and you need to change some equipment around, please let me know before you go unplugging anything that's connected to the PA system. For example, if you have an acoustic guitar up there plugged into a DI box, give me a heads up before you go yanking that cord. Because if I've got that channel turned on the system and you unplug it, there's a decent chance that I'm going to get a big snap or pop through the system. And that doesn't sound good, and I don't want to hit the audience with that stuff. And it's also possible that a really big transient like that could even damage some speakers. So give the sound guy a heads up and say, hey, I'd like to unplug this thing, or is it okay if I unplug it? So it gives them a chance to hit mute on that channel, so it's safe to do so. While you're playing your show, please don't shout out to the audience, hey everybody, it's sounding good out there, can you hear the vocals okay? I mean, really? I'm sitting right out in the audience, I've got a mixer in front of me, and if something isn't sounding right, it's my job to try to make it so we fix that situation. And hopefully I'm doing a decent job of it, and I'm doing the best I can to make your band sound the best that it can. And I've done this a while. I consider myself kind of a professional, and so that nobody's grandma is going to come up to me and give me some sound mixing advice that I'm not aware of. No, sometimes, we're dealing with a lot of constraints, and maybe there is something that's off. Maybe, for whatever reason, I can't get the backing vocal to work right, and I'm just going, it is what it is, and that's just the way it is. And the compromises you're dealing with, you do in order to provide the best overall band sound. And so, if an audience member comes up and tells me something, I know. I'm already well aware of it. Or else they just simply have a different opinion than I do. And a lot of people like my mix. I'm sure that, there's somebody in the audience who'd prefer the mix to be a different way. There always is. You can't please everybody all the time. But I try to please most of the people most of the time, and I seem to be successful at that. So You know, if someone's grandma comes up and says, my grandson's playing bass and I want to hear more, well, that's one person's opinion, but I'm not going to change the mix for the entire venue to appease one person who's not an expert telling me how to do my job. Unless there's a bribe attached, of course. That's a whole other story. But, so don't ask the audience, especially publicly like that, how I'm doing my job. I mean, that's insulting. Come on, please. At the end of the night, our show time is 1 a.m. We end the show at 1 a.m. So end your show at 1 a.m. If the bar is just rocking and everybody's super into it and you're getting a lot of applause, sure, do an encore. Do a song for an encore. But end your show. Don't piddle on for an extra 15, 20 minutes. I mean, that's disrespectful to the venue. We got to clean this place up and close it up. The show ends at 1, so end your show at 1. And, it's your epic show, but it's our day job. And I'm sure you wouldn't like it at your job if it's 5 minutes to closing time and you've got a customer in the store who's still piddling around and not wanting to leave, and he makes you stay there for an extra 30 minutes. You've got plans. So don't do that to the venue. Don't go over your show time, or not by much at any rate. I understand. If you want to do an encore, that's fine. Do an encore. But don't do 2, 3, 4 extra songs and keep pushing us later and later and later, because we've got to clean up this place. And if you do that kind of thing, you can make the staff at the venue have to stay a lot later than they expected to stay. Nobody likes that. So finish your show on time. Start on time, finish on time. Keep track of the time. At the end of the show, show some appreciation. It's a really good idea to do a shout out and say, well, we really had a great time here tonight, and I'd like to do a shout out to our bartenders, Mark and Tiffany, who were setting us up all night, and to our sound guy, Barry, over here. And so thanks again to Mike's Bar for having us out, and we hope to see you again soon. Everybody drive home safe. Everybody loves to be called out. That's a matter of respect. It's very polite. And it's nice to show a little love to those people who make a decision as to whether or not you come back. So I recommend that. At the end of your night, I suggest you close strong. The audience is going to remember the beginnings and the endings, especially the endings. And you want your audience to go home with great memories of the show. And so I would suggest that you pick some of your best songs and hit hard and close hard and leave them wanting more, rather than letting your show kind of dwindle down into meandering nothingness at the end of the night, because that's what people are going to walk away remembering. At the end of the evening, the venue would appreciate if you would clear the stage as promptly as possible. So when the stage lights go down, take a quick bow to your audience. Please grab any liquids or drinks that are up on the stage and take all of that stuff off the stage. Then take a real quick breather, 5 minutes at most, stretch a little bit. When your friends come up, tell them that you'll be right back with them in a couple minutes after you grab your gear off the stage. Then turn around, go back on stage and gather up the drums and your guitars and amplifiers and all your stuff. Pack it up and move it off the stage. Please do not invite your friends and disconnected other parties to come up on the stage and hang out, because the more people that get up there, it just becomes more chaotic and it slows things down. So just efficiently pack up your stuff, move it all off the stage. In our venue, you can just park that stuff by the back door if you want. And once all of your stuff is off the stage, then I can follow up and get my stuff off the stage. And because the venue is waiting for me to get out of the way so that they can come in and clean up their part of the stage. And so everybody's waiting for everybody, and it's really appreciated if you would grab your equipment and get it out of the way so the rest of the venue staff can get busy and clean the place up so we can close for the night. If you leave your equipment up there for an extra 30 minutes or 40 minutes while you hang out and drink with your buddies, understand that the venue staff is sitting around kind of waiting for you to move that stuff off so that they can do their part, so they can close the bar, and we can all go home. And so if you don't pick up your stuff promptly, that means that some people who are working at the venue might have to stay late, not get paid for that time, and nobody appreciates that. So the quicker you can strike your gear, the more it's appreciated. And like I say, in our venue, you don't have to take it out to your car. You can just park it all by the door, but just clear your stuff off so that the venue can start cleaning up for the night, because there isn't that much time from the end of the show to venue close time. At the end of the night, hopefully you had a good night. I would suggest you go over to the sound guy and shake the guy's hand and say, hey, it was great working with you. Really appreciate you helping us with our show. And of course, if he did a good job, you can say, hey, I thought the mix was excellent. But even if he was terrible, I'd still thank him for working with you, because the sound guy probably has a lot to say about which bands get hired and rehired. Now, of course, if you pack the joint and there's a lot of people and a lot of activity and the bar is overflowing with money, well, you're golden. You're coming back. But in most cases, the sound guy is going to go talk to the venue owner. And the venue owner is going to say, hey, how'd it go tonight? And the sound guy is going to say something. And you want him to say, hey, those are really great guys. I had a good time with them, and I thought they put on a good show. And he's more likely to do that if you have a positive relationship with him. Even if you had trouble during the evening, if you have a good relationship with the guy you're working with, he's more likely to say something positive about you and be more interested in having you come back. So I think that's wise politics. Now, I wouldn't necessarily suggest you bribe the sound guy. But, understand that the venue sound guys aren't making that much money and they don't often get tipped. But if you do think about tipping the sound guy, I would suggest you do it at the beginning of the evening. Because at that point, you have more control over what the outcome is. So maybe it wouldn't be such a bad idea to, collect $5 from everybody on stage. Go down to the sound guy before the show and say, hey, Dennis, we really appreciate you doing everything you can to make us sound great, and we know how important it is to have a good sound guy to make our band sound good. And so, hey, just to show our appreciation, here's $20. Why don't you have a burger and a beer on us tonight? My gosh, that's pretty rare. I mean, if somebody did that to me, I'd be going, oh my gosh, thanks, golly. And I think that I would probably be just a little bit more inclined to pay really close attention to your mix. And if anything, happened during the show, any little issues with people, I'd probably be a little more forgiving. And considering that the sound guy is the guy who probably determines whether or not you get hired again, unless you can just fill the till in the bar with lots of money, I mean, then you're golden. It's probably a good idea to have him be on your side. So I think all of these tips are really pretty much common sense. Success in life is largely dependent upon how well you can work with other people. And so I hope that you have positive relationships with the venues that you play in, work well with people, have a good time, and make it fun for everyone, and hopefully make some money for the venues that you play at. And with that, I wish you well, and I hope that you have many, many excellent shows. Thanks for watching, folks. If you like the content, I invite you to push a button down there somewhere and subscribe. Be sure to hit that bell notification so you're alerted to new material that comes out. If you'd like to get in touch with me, you can find me at www.soundguy.rocks. And I wish you well.